We all know Royal Tiger Imports military surplus firearms are a roll of the dice. And let's just say, when this C-grade World War II veteran rifle showed up, missing parts, broken and packed with dead bugs, I thought I lost that bet. But I wasn't ready to give up. In this video, we'll cover the entire journey together, from the unboxing and inspection, through the cleaning and restoration process, and finally out to the range for its first test shots. Stick around and let's find out if restoring this battered RTI Lee-Enfield was worth the hassle or just a waste of money. Looks like we have some bubble wrap in there, a little end cap piece. There it is. It is a No. 4 Mark I rifle. These were a C-grade rifle on Inner Ordnance's website, which means that they are missing parts or in some way messed up, and I can already tell right away a couple major things going on with this rifle that's really unfortunate. The first thing that is sticking out to me is the rear sight here. It appears that our battle sight has been broken off. It was dropped at some point or something because it was bent and then it snapped. Luckily for me, the No. 4 rifle has a flip-up style sight as well, which you can also use to shoot the rifle. Although that feels like something is missing in there too, because there is no spring tension on this at all. It's just kind of free-floating there. I'm missing the cocking knob on the end of the bolt here. That shouldn't be a very difficult part to source and replace. The rear handguard has a pretty significant crack down the side of it, but other than that, on first glance, the wood on this rifle is looking very nice. Some of the rifles on their website were missing the front protective sight hoods. It looks like this rifle does have those included, so I don't have to worry about trying to find that. You can definitely tell something is wrong with this bolt. It's not locking into place like it should be. Now, the bolt head was not screwed all the way in. It needed one more rotation to be all the way screwed in there. Everything's a little bit gritty and greasy. The wood is looking really nice on this. I think after this cleans up, this is going to be a very good looking rifle, very handsome. So we can see there that it's a No. 4 Mark I, and down here on the wrist area, it stated 1944 and has the serial number. Inner Ordnance put some kind of tag on it here. Let's see if this has anything of note on it. It says that the trigger is broken. Well, that kind of sucks. I guess I'll be looking for trigger parts. Our import mark is up here on the front of the muzzle. Not too bad. And I'll be inserting a picture of the bore right here. Hopefully that's looking okay. I've seen some very suspect bores from some of the rifles coming from Royal Tiger Imports and Inner Ordnance. The bluing on the rifle is pretty much all gone. It's mostly in the white. I hate this handguard has that crack in it. If that would have been in better shape, I would have been super happy about the wood on this rifle, because the forestock looks very, very nice. It does have some type of writing on it or something. Looks like APDC maybe? And then the number 59. And there's some other very light, looks like marker or paint right here. If you didn't notice it earlier, it had a cool little tie here on the wrist. I'll probably be leaving that with the rifle. That adds a little bit of character. It said the trigger was broken. Of course, I haven't taken this all the way down yet to be able to diagnose exactly what's going on with it, but to me, it looks like that the disconnecting part of the trigger is working properly. But luckily, the availability of No. 4 Mark I parts is pretty good. You can pretty much get anything you need for them. I had to get this on cam because I've never seen this in a rifle before. When I got the forestock off, it had bugs all on the inside of it. Look at that. Those little bug pieces. You can see this one right here very well. Look at him. He's got legs and stuff. Yeah, there's a little colony of bugs living inside of my rifle. They didn't seem to be eating all the stock, although there are some carcasses inside the stock as well. I don't think it was a termite infestation or anything, but that's just kind of weird. These were stored in unideal conditions, so it's not too surprising. I've taken this thing all the way apart. I've never done that to a No. 4 rifle before. I believe every screw on it has been removed. The products we're going to use in the metal don't mix with wood. We will get rid of the forestock. I've completely taken off the buttstock. So I have all my metal parts. I'm going to place them into a glass container. This is a Pyrex dish. I'll be dealing with the barreled action separately just because it's big and unwieldy. All my barrel bands and various screws. I have all the little parts for the trigger mechanism. I'm confident in my ability to be able to put this back together, so I'm not too worried about getting all the pieces mixed up. I mean, they only go back together one way, so with trial and error, I'll figure it out. I have all the sling hardware. I even have the butt plate screws. Literally every portion of the rifle that has a metal component. Look at my hands. This rifle is disgusting on the inside. It is extremely dirty. It's greasy. It's pretty gross, but I think you'll find that my methods for cleaning this up are pretty easy and quick. What I like starting with is some carburetor cleaner. This is extremely cheap carburetor cleaner. It doesn't have to be anything special. And you basically spray down everything. This carburetor cleaner is a great degreaser, and it will remove a lot of the baked on gunk and really loosen everything up. I get it real good in all the parts, paying attention to the areas that were particularly heavy with the gunk. And then what you'll find is that you have a good amount of carburetor cleaner left in the bottom of your dish here, which is what we want, because just spraying this is good. But really what you want to do is get in there with your universal cleaning tool, a toothbrush, and really scrub everything down and just get all that built up crap off all your metal surfaces. You'll notice that the bolt parts are not included in this dish. It's because I've already done them separately. I knew I had to take the bolt down completely because it needed a cocking piece. So I'd already done this process with it. When I started looking at the internals of the rifle and noticed how absolutely dirty this thing was, I decided I needed to do the whole rifle this way. All of this gunk was on the rifle a few minutes ago. We've loosened up all the crap on the rifle. We can see that there's a lot of debris in the bottom of our Pyrex here. So this part couldn't be more simple. We're basically just gonna make the water coming out of my sink as hot as we can possibly get it. And we're gonna simply wash off the parts one at a time. We'll just wash them off. So all the crap goes down the drain instead of being stuck to our rifle. I'll do that for every single part on here to get all the degreaser off and to get all the crud off of them. For a lot of rifles, you can stop after that part. Degrease it, clean it, water, maybe a little soap if you have some really bad spots, and then you dry it all out, liberally put some rim oil on it or some other type of gun oil to preserve it, and you can stop right there. I'm gonna go one step further. All right, so we're looking at a stock pot full of Enfield soup. I've already placed the larger parts in the boiling water here. I have the small parts here. We'll go ahead and dump those in. What are we doing boiling gun parts? Well, iron oxide is rust. Rust is red iron oxide. What we want is black iron oxide, like gun bluing. We don't want red iron oxide. And now I'm no chemist, so I'm not the guy to be asking the questions about why this works, but it does work. You boil the gun parts at a rapid boil, which this is not up to yet, for about 45 minutes to an hour. And then when you pull them out, you will see that the surface is coated in your orange iron oxide. The boiling really loosens it up, brings everything to the surface so you can wipe it off. You do what's called carding with steel wool or a very fine carding wheel to knock all that rust off, and then you have your nice blued finish underneath. Let's talk about wood for a moment. With military surplus firearms, when we're talking about restoration or preservation, wood is a huge factor. So the wood for this particular rifle looks pretty good. There's not too much wrong with it. It is dirty though. You want to do as little as possible to your military surplus wood. My go-to is very simple. Soap and water, clean it off, and then a couple coats of boiled linseed oil and call it a day. You don't want to do any sanding. You don't want to put any kind of weird strippers or anything on it. You might have to resort to something like that if it is completely soaked in cosmoline, but even then, you don't really have to. I actually like taking a heat gun to those to get the cosmoline out. There's nothing really wrong with this wood. It is literally just dirty with dirt. So all we have to do is clean it. That's it. So I'm just gonna wash this down with some warm soapy water. I don't want to go too heavy because I don't want to mess up the finish that's on there. It will, without doubt, remove some of that original finish, but that's not a problem because we're going to bring that right back when we put our linseed oil on it after the cleaning process. On this particular rifle, even though I don't need to do much to the outside of the wood, my main concern is actually going to be the inside of the wood. All that crud that we had on the barreled action is also on the inside of the stock channel here. And if we don't get all that cleaned off well enough, as soon as we put the rifle back together, it'll be right back on the metal again, and it'll be just like we never did anything. We can see up close, down inside of that channel is very disgusting, and it's not gonna be easy to get to in there. So we're gonna go back again to using our universal cleaning tool, our toothbrush, but really what you want to do first is loosen everything up, and the best thing to do that with is just a flathead screwdriver. Now we're not going in here and gouging and picking at things. We're being very easy, and we're just going through and we're scraping. We're staying parallel with the wood and going through and scraping off this layer of disgustingness that's all over it. After I get through scraping off, I'll get the toothbrush and the water, and I'll just go through and clean everything off real good. And then you want to finish it up with some compressed air. Just go in there and blow it all out and make sure everything's really dry. and then you have to give it a couple days to dry out completely before you try to put your boiled linseed oil on it. We're going offhand for a moment because we're still making our Enfield soup. I've flipped the barrel to action around so that way I can get the muzzle end as well, and I figured this would be a good opportunity to go ahead and show you what I was talking about. You see how there's now orange oxide at the surface? Well, that wasn't visible before boiling, but it was always there. The boiling didn't make it just randomly appear. It's a lot of the corner areas where you'll see like high wear, and that's what we want to get rid of. Even though you couldn't see it, it was there and can potentially damage the weapon over time. Ideally, we want to preserve these firearms, not only for ourselves, but for future generations as well. So I got everything out of the boiling water, and as it turns out, almost every piece on this rifle have some spots of rust that came up from doing that. You couldn't see any of this rust in the magazine before, and now it is very visible on all the little internal pieces. So what do we do now? We got rust all over the gun. This part is pretty simple, but it's very time consuming. This is 4/0 steel wool. This piece has actually been used for the same process before, so it's kind of beat up. But basically what you want to do is just very lightly go over the surface of that, and miraculously that rust just disappears. It just goes away. See, it's not adhered to the metal anymore. It's just on the surface. All you're doing is wiping it away. There's a nice section of rust there, and we'll run the steel wool over that, and look at that. The rust is gone. Just like magic. Like I said, it is time consuming. You have to go over the whole rifle and rub the rust off. If you get to a part that it won't rub off, it needs to be boiled again. Try it again, it should work out. This won't remove pitting, but it will stop pitting from progressing. If you get a piece that's very pitted, you do this process, you boil it, and then you go over it with your steel wool and get down in those pits to get all the rust out of the inside, and it'll stop that rust from getting worse over time. So this is probably gonna take me the rest of the night to just go over and get all the rust off, but it's already looking a lot better. We are in the final stages of bringing my Royal Tiger Imports No.4 Mark I rifle back to life. In shipping, the rear front handguard was broken along with the rear sight. Now, I considered trying to repair this handguard, but this chunk of wood was blown out. That wouldn't be that hard to fix. The cracks in it, though, are pretty severe. It has 2 cracks. You can see them there. The larger of which runs pretty much the full length of the handguard. There's a hairline crack. I managed to find a replacement handguard directly from Century Arms. This was only about $8, I think it was. The issue with this is, though, this is a beechwood front handguard, I believe, and the original is something else. It's either maple or walnut or something like that. It's a darker wood. So, of course, this handguard won't match the wood on the rifle. The wood for this rifle has a very red tint to it. In hopes of matching the colors up a little bit, I'm actually going to stain this beechwood handguard. I have some Minwax penetrating stain here. This is red mahogany number 225. I have used this before when I refinished a desk, and it looks quite nice. The handguard itself did not fit the rifle when I first got it. It was extremely tight when I was placing it under the little retaining ring here, and it still does. It has a spring tension. It doesn't sit flat on the rifle like the original handguard does. This one just sits straight down. This one has a little bit of a gap in it. It's under tension there. So I might have to do some more sanding on it, but for now I think it's good enough. This is a new old stock handguard, and it's meant to be specifically fitted to the rifle it's gonna go on. So it's a little bit oversized in pretty much every dimension. This is the stain rag I use. It's actually an old pair of underwear. These have never been worn, by the way. As soon as they were pulled out of the pack, they were put into stain duty, and they've stained all kinds of stuff in the past. So we'll get a little bit of our stain on our cloth here, and we'll just paint that on fairly thick. And right away, you can see that color. It's looking a lot like the 4 stock on the rifle. It's not nearly as dark as the original handguard was, but oh man, is that looking good. I've heard in the past that beechwood doesn't really hold stain that well, but this is looking fantastic already. Look at that. Look at how close those are. It's almost a perfect match. I've given that some time to soak in a little bit and dry. It is looking pretty good. I'm gonna take a part of the rag that hasn't been used for stain and just give it a quick wipe off to take off any excess. That way I can really get a good look at it to see what I think. Even though that is looking good, I think it would benefit from at least one more coat. And put it on a little thicker this time. Since it's already soaked some in, it's not going to be quite as absorbent as it was before. Oh yeah, that's really darkening up nicely. Wow, now that is a pretty piece of wood. While our second coat of stain is drying, we'll start taking a look at replacing some of the other parts this rifle was missing. So the reason I haven't been able to shoot it yet is because the bolt was missing the cocking piece. It was also missing the extractor spring and the cocking piece screw. So I sourced the extractor spring, which is a very small little piece there, from Sarco. I was able to find the cocking piece and the cocking piece screw from Century Arms. The cocking piece itself has a little ball detent on it, and there is a matching detent on the bolt head. So I'm guessing this just slides in and snaps into place. It's going to be under spring tension, so it's probably not going to be easy. Things like this are always more difficult than they should be. But I will just press on that and see if it will snap in. Apply some pressure with my table here. And it did fill up that gap down there at the bottom, so I think it's pretty much in there. This is the actual little extractor piece, and it goes in between the spring and the bolt head. For this part, I've enlisted the help of my little vise here. So we'll vise the bolt head down. If you don't have a vise, this is more of a freehand job, I'd say. And it's pretty secure. So I've tried putting these in separately several times. I'm going to try sliding them in at the same time and see if that helps at all. So I'm going to kind of stack them up. Start it with the spring, and then try to push the extractor in with it, and maybe that'll allow it to go in there. This is a fairly difficult part to deal with. It's looking like we can push it all down in there. Well, I didn't hear any snaps or anything, so it's not like it snapped in, but both pieces are in there. I think the spring needs to go down just a little bit more, so I'm going to give it a couple taps with a punch and a hammer to try to seat it in there fully. That's got it pretty well bottomed out. See if it has spring tension. It does. All right, now we got to see if the extractor hole lined up with the appropriate hole in the bolt head. And it is down a little bit further than it should be, but that should be easy to realign. There it is, just needed a little push forward. And then all this is just simply held in with one little screw. So that's one piece down. Hopefully that was the most difficult part. Everything from here is pretty straightforward. We're pretty much just putting the bolt back together. So I got a little cocking piece screw and the cocking piece itself. Lee-Enfield bolts are super simple. That's the main bolt spring. It just goes down into the bolt body, which otherwise doesn't have anything in it. You have your rather large firing pin that's threaded on the end. The threaded part comes out the back end here. To properly take the Enfield bolt down, you need one of these special bolt wrenches. I also picked this up from Sarco. I think it was about $13 or $15, something like that. And I have several Enfields, so it's actually worth it to me to have this wrench so I can work on several different guns. Push the bolt down under spring tension and start screwing the cocking piece just to get the thread started. Once that starts threading and it can hold spring tension, this can be inverted again. Insert your little wrench until it seats home inside of the firing pin. And then you can just start screwing it all in. The end of that bolt is keyed to line up with the round portion of the cocking piece there. And that's where your cocking screw goes in and holds it all together. Let's try cocking it and decocking it a couple times. All that seems to be together properly. Then it's just as simple as screwing this bolt head in. And that is a number 4 bolt. All of these pieces were fairly inexpensive. The rifle itself was $250. After shipping and everything, it ended up being like $287. For a number 4, that's a pretty good price. Of course, it needed work done. So after I've bought all the parts for it and all that, the total cost at the moment is $335. We'll try to insert our bolt here. The Enfield bolt head should have a little bit of slop in it because it has to fold down into this little crevice. And we just press our plunger and push it the rest of the way down. The bolt slides forward. And there it is, completely cocked. Now, the tag on this rifle said that the trigger was broken. I think it is finally time to see whether or not that trigger is actually broken. Let's give that trigger a little squeeze and see if it fires. Bang! I think we have a functional rifle. Let's go ahead and cycle that again. Oh yeah, that awesomely smooth and fast Lee-Enfield cock on close action. This baby is almost range ready. I ended up giving this front handguard 2 more coats of the stain, and I've given it plenty of time to cure, and it's nice and dry now. The final color is an extremely good match for the 4 stock. However, as I figured it would be, it's not quite as dark as the original handguard was. One of the major things on this rifle that was wrong with it is the rear sight was broken. This is that rear sight that came on it from Royal Tiger Imports. It was broken shipping. There was a corresponding hole in the box that lined up with the aperture for the sight there. And there's the piece of the sight that we lost that was broken. So I did source a new old stock sight. It's a Mark III rear sight, just like the one I'm replacing. However, it has an electro penciled 4 on there. So I don't know if it's like updated to a Mark IV. It is a pretty much 100% match. They're both stamped sights. I found this on gunpartscorp.org. It was $20. I think that's a pretty good deal. It's unfortunate that I had to spend that extra $20. That could have been avoided by using a little bit better packaging for the shipping, but it is what it is. I still have my other original sight installation hardware that we're going to use. Now there is a hole here that this spring goes in, and then there is a plunger that gives the sight spring tension. And this thing is basically just pinned on. No screws or anything. So getting this started is going to be the hardest part because we're fighting spring tension to do so. We'll push this plunger down some and start our pin through. And then we have to place our tiny little washer on the pin. That washer actually has a flat bottom that meets up against the plunger. Going to depress that plunger with my punch just a little bit here to loosen everything up. All right, now that that is started, it's going to become quite a bit easier. Or it should anyway. Because now we just take our rear sight. There's the aligning holes that the pin goes through. Wedge it in there. It's quite tight, but it needs to be. And then we just depress that to further depress the plunger. And when it lines up, we should be able to stick the pin through. And we got it through one side. And then we'll just try to go ahead and slide it through the other side. And there it is, snapped right into place. We have to turn this until we can align the hole that's in the pin with the notch that's cut out here in the sight base for the receiver. And then we have the tiniest little pin. That's it in the palm of my hand. Slides into that hole, and that's what holds it all into place. There it is, poking up just a little bit, and we'll tap that in with our punch. And that's seated in. There we can see the pin went all the way through the other pin, and there's a little recess in there for it. That is our rear sight installation. I am getting excited now because we are getting there. So we have our aperture for the rear sight. The aperture that raises up and slides up and down works. The spring in that is good. I believe the battle sight on this is set at 200 meters. Now let's get the rest of this bad boy back together. In the downtime I have between filming the parts of this video, I actually managed to pick up an original sling for it. My rifle is a 1944 dated BSA Shirley, and I managed to find a 1944 dated khaki Enfield sling. Heck yeah. So now we really have a completed number 4. Now that I've went through all this getting it back together, there's only one thing left to do, and that's to finally pull the trigger on it. So let's get this guy out to the range. So we have our number 4 Mark I grade C rifle from Royal Tiger Imports. Since putting the stain on it, I have waxed it to give it more of that original feel. And the color match is decent. You can tell it's not 100%, but it looks pretty good. And we should be ready to go. Let's go ahead and load this up and see if we can hit anything with it. So I have a couple different varieties of 303 ammo here. This first one is Wolf, steel cased. And that loaded in nicely. I did stagger these rounds to avoid rim lock. Depending on the ammo, you may or may not have to do that. This is pretty partisan on this clip, so we'll start out with brass cased. It's always a little harder to get that second one in there, but we have 10 rounds in the rifle. The battle sight of this rifle is 200 meters. We're only shooting at about 50 yards, so I'm going to be taking a 6 o'clock hold, and hopefully we'll hit something.
Ow. Ow. Ow.
So if I take my time and actually get my breathing and trigger squeeze right, it's pretty much dead on at this distance on steel. I did have a couple misses there, but that was just all me jerking it. I think I ended up with a pretty decent shooter, to tell you the truth. So we are back at the review table. Range day with this gun was a ton of fun. Given all that this rifle has been through over the course of its life, it really is one of my projects that I'm most proud of. getting it back up and running. The bore on this rifle looked decent when I first got it, but after taking it out and shooting on a couple of separate occasions, I brought it back and cleaned it each time, and now the bore is looking outstanding, especially in comparison to the other offerings I've seen from Royal Tiger Imports. This rifle has literally been all over the world. There's no telling what it has seen in its time on this planet. One of my viewers pointed out that it has a screw running through the stock here. That's what's called an Ishi bolt. Ishi short for Ishapur, which is the rifle factory that produced Enfield rifles in India, meaning that at some point this rifle saw some kind of service in India. After its Indian service, that's probably when it made its way to Ethiopia and Africa. No telling what it went through while it was there. And then eventually Interordnance got their hands on them and brought them back over to the US for us to buy and enjoy these fantastic rifles. I'm so glad that I was able to conserve this awesome little piece of history, and hopefully now it'll be around and operational for many more generations to come. This was an extremely long video, guys. If you stuck around with me through this, thank you so very much. I truly appreciate that. Hopefully it wasn't too boring and you found it to be helpful in some way, or at the very least entertaining. Thank you so much for checking the video out. If you liked it, hit that thumbs up button. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe to the channel, because I intend to continue producing content like this in the future. Let me know what you thought about the video down in the comments, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. See you then. Peace.